start feeling it about a month before it happened. Before I even look at the calendar, I get more emotional. I get really cranky and on edge. And what's worse is I get defensive over the smallest things that people say, mostly family, things that they didn't mean anything by. But in that moment, I'm just set off and I don't know why. If that's ever happened to you, I want you to hang in there with me today because I'm going to talk about something I minimized in my own life. And I think a lot of you may have minimized it too. Hey, friends, I'm Christy, also known as the Comeback Mentor, and this is Renewed Heart Healing. And if this is your first time here, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button because what we're talking about today, and particularly in this series, is the heaviness of grief, but it's real. And I think a lot of you need to hear it because I needed to hear it myself. I lost my mother 2 years ago next month. I grieved really, really hard for months. I knew she was ready to go on. I knew her body just was tired and she was ready to meet her savior. Was I ready to let her go? Sorry. This is how raw it still is, but I want you to hang in there with me today because grab you some Kleenexes. I may stir up some emotions. I know I may cry, but this is real. Next month will be 2 years. 2 years since I don't have my mother on this side of earth anymore. I hit this invisible expectation during my grieving process that said by month 6, 7, 8, I should be reaching a later stage of the grief cycle. But that didn't happen for me because subsequently, 6 months later, I lost my dad. And then shortly after that, I had another loss. And then shortly after that, I had another loss. So I had 4 major losses within a year and a half. Maybe not even, a year and a half. A year and a half. And here's something I had to face during all of that grieving process. Every person I lost was an elder. Somewhere along my pathway of life, I absorbed this crazy idea that certain losses hit harder than others, and I began to minimize my loss of my parents. When you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and you lose someone close to you, I had this frame of mind that, oh my gosh, that's so tragic. Their mourning and their loss and their experience is so intense. And here I am in midlife, in that stage, in that space where it's expected to lose your parents because of their age. And that my grieving process and your grieving process should look different. It should be easier. Shouldn't hit as hard. And that perception really got into my grieving process, and it made me question, which I can't believe I entered into this space, but it made me question if I had the right to keep grieving as hard and as intense as I was grieving, because these were my parents. These are the people who remained constant my whole life. Just because I'm in this stage and that, they lived long and fruitful lives Why was the world standard telling me I was grieving incorrectly? I was taking too long. You should be following the stages. I was telling myself that other people's losses counted more than mine. Someone who had lost a child, someone who had lost a spouse, those who lost their battle with mental health or PTSD. There is absolute real validity in all of that. And I am not minimizing that. But there's also this piece right here. We're actually taught in school and in college. I went through it in psychology and even in the military. We're taught the stages of grief. We're handed this. I was actually the superintendent of a chapel in Texas, and this is part of their training, is to help people move through the stages of grief. We are given this nice, neat little package with a ribbon and a bow on it saying, okay, there's hope at the end of this process. You just have to get through all of these stages and you're going to be okay. And we're told that that expectation, that order, is going to bring you the healing that you need on the other side. But here's my question. What happens when you don't conform to that? What if you skip a stage? What if you don't even go through the first 3 stages and you end up at stage 4 or 5? What if you stay in one stage for years? I respect processes. I respect structure. And I see the validity of processes because I operate at my best knowing I have a structure, I know what is expected of me, and that at the end of that framework, I am going to be back to 100. But that's exactly what did not happen. I clouded my own grieving process. Boy, I rained on it. I restricted it and I kept it kind of boxed in. There came a point where I was so critical of my processing of grief, or not even processing, my being inside the box there in my grief, that I attacked my own process of not moving fast enough and not checking those boxes. What do you do when you fight against yourself, when you need to give yourself grace? I absolutely wore myself out running through all these self-critical questions, going through a process with God. What's wrong with me? Why am I still sitting here knowing that they are in a much better place and that they're, joyful and happy where they are with you, but I'm hurting so bad on this side? I wore myself out. Loss is loss. Grief is grief is grief, no matter what stage of life we're in. The expectation of the world when you're in midlife is that you've been through enough life that you can handle it, you can move on, you can compartmentalize, and you can follow the rules, and you can follow the stages and all of the processes done, and you move on instead of living with it, moving with it, understanding it, giving yourself space and grace. I saw something recently about women in midlife who are experiencing grief, and it really, really resonated with me. It named exactly where I've been standing, and it told me that my grief didn't need to earn its place or space. Grief doesn't have to have a hierarchy. It doesn't have to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't have to be, oh, your loss is so much greater than my loss, or my loss is so much greater than your loss. I mean, why would we even have that thought process? Because of what we are exposed to, what we hear, what we see. There is something about how the Lord gives us time, how he can soften our hearts before we're ready to receive what he's already provided for us. There is most definitely a moral to this story. When we're not in alignment with him, if we're not seeking him, if we don't yet understand the unique way that he's speaking to us, and I've been on this amazing journey of expanding his voice in my life and how he speaks to me, we can miss that provision that he is sliding across the table in front of us. But he doesn't give up. That's the beautiful thing. He doesn't give up on us. He keeps passing that plate back around again and again. Every time you push back from the table, he doesn't push back from the table. He's still at the table. He's still going to put that plate in front of you. That reminds me of Genesis 17 and 18, the story of Abraham and Sarah. God told them both that they were going to have a child in their old age. And he didn't just tell them once. Of course, they were like, how in the world are we going to do this as old as we are? I don't know about that. Well, 3 months later, God visited them again and told them again. He didn't give up on his promise to them. He understands the flesh. He created us. He loves us so much that he doesn't want us to miss out on the promises. And he doesn't want us to miss out on the provision. It took 2 tellings for the promise to kind of land in the room with Abraham and Sarah. They're like, okay, he just said that twice. I still have some doubt, but he said that twice. And God is a good God. He doesn't lie. For me, that plate kept being passed in front of me, and I would push back from the table for 3 years until I finally said yes. My yes was a healing modality that he knew I needed ahead of time. His provision for me was healing and up-leveling my relationship with him in such a unique way that I didn't understand or have access to 3 years prior to me saying yes. He got my attention and he started softening my heart by building trust and keeping that plate in front of me. Push back that plate until I said yes. The timing was, and it's amazing how the Lord orchestrates everything. The timing was exactly when I needed to say yes. So your yes, and by the way, I have a whole yes series under the playlist of the yes series, and I'll put that link here and in the description. But he starts preparing you for your yes ahead of time. He knows you very well. He created you. He knows what makes you happy. He knows what thrills you, and he knows how you fit into his kingdom assignment. But that plate that I finally said yes to, I cannot describe to you the impact it had on me. Yes, I'm still grieving. It's quite obvious. I have teared up several times during this conversation. I was inside of the yes, up-leveling my relationship and learning the uniqueness of the heart healing modality that he had served me on the platter when my mother passed away. Y'all, he prepared me for the provision that he had for me, and all I had to say was yes at the right time. He put that together for me. What does he put together for you inside of that yes? I not only had, I was in a gap season, and I talk a lot about that inside comeback conversations, and I'll put that playlist here too. I talk a lot about sitting in the gap season. You close off a season, you're excited about a new one, but whoops, I fell off in this big pile of quicksand and I don't know how to get out. Even though I was in that gap season, I knew I needed a level up. I became more and more open to the provision, the plate that he was putting in front of me, the yes he needed me to say. And I had a new way to see my own healing that I didn't have 3 years prior. He knew my mother was going to pass away during that year. He knew the provision I needed, the support I needed, the community I needed. Because when I fell off into that gap, I was lost. I knew exactly who I was, what was needed of me, and I had a community to serve. And I loved serving that military community. And I knew that it was time to close that season. But when I did, whoops, I didn't know I was going to miss the community. I didn't know that there was going to be a gap there that was going to be lonely, that was going to be weird, because I didn't know who to serve, how to figure it out. And I was softened enough to say yes to this plate. If you're in the middle of that kind of a gap season right now, or no matter what your gap season looks like, maybe you're pursuing a divine dream that God has placed in you, or maybe something out of the blue, unexpected, hurtful, awful, strange has happened. And your gap is just getting deeper and deeper, and you feel like you're really, really, really stuck. I understand that. I understand it very well. Heart healing carried me through, and the community that I was absorbed into carried me through more than I could have done by myself. I have now a healing modality to go to. When the grief starts to become overwhelming and I start minimizing myself and my processes, I know what to lean into. Sometimes we need more than prayer. Sometimes we need more than our church, our pastor, our church family. Sometimes we need more. God has all kinds of provision. Scripture tells us. And I don't know how long I'm going to have a reaction when it comes close to that anniversary date. But I do know who's with me and who has a provision. If you're in midlife right now and you're probably standing in two things at once, like an invitation, something God has placed on your heart that you really want to accomplish. I want to do this. I'm in the perfect space to do this now. And then something happens that throws you deeper into that quicksand. If you're grieving, it thickens that quicksand and it slows you down. Grief will make you feel like it's holding you back from your calling. Like you have to finish grieving before you're allowed to move through that season into what you want to do. But I don't believe that's true. I think God can carry both at once if you'll say yes. You don't have to minimize what you've lost to make room for what you're being called to. I'm not. This is actually the start of something new here on my channel. I'm calling it Grief in the Gap because I'm living it. And it's a space for exactly this. Experiencing loss and grief, trauma, right here in the middle of life. And it doesn't always get the space and the grace that it deserves by ourselves, because we compare ourselves to other people's processes. How you process your grief is between you and God. But if grief is part of something you're carrying right now, that right there is some of the deepest work I do inside of renewed heart healing sessions. Bringing what you've lost into a space where God can actually meet in it, not around it. There's more. I have a little video you can watch on what renewed heart healing looks like, but it is the most unique processing, focused, receiving, uplifting time that you can have. And I'll put the link to the page here in the description. If this conversation spoke something to you, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and stick around for upcoming sessions. We're going to keep talking about this because this is very, very real, very raw. Your grief doesn't have to earn its place at all, and it does not have to hold you back from what God has for you. We're going to talk more about how these two can exist in the same space and give grace. Both can be true at once. More will be revealed shortly, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in episode 2. Bye.